No. Wrong podcast. Welcome back to the Who is Will Sims podcast. Today, my guest is Sir Brad Cox of the Hartford County Knights Association. Now, dude, I've known you for years, man. I first met you when you were playing with Skitzo Calypso, and then we worked together a lot with We Love the Underground, and now you've got a new band, Veteran Avenue. You're an author. You're a fellow podcaster. Actually, being on your podcast made me like way more confident about doing my own, because I just loved how well you did yours, and I felt so comfortable on that one. So
yeah, I didn't really have any framework because I didn't listen to podcasts. So in going out to do it, it was just kind of like, I'm just figuring this out as I go, making it up as I go. So I feel like I always tell people, if I can do it, you can do it, you know?
Yeah, man. So, I've been listening to your music for years. Like I wish I'd like listened to more like the whole albums, but obviously you've sent me like songs that are in your set.
Right.
So I listened to those, and then each band I've learned more and more of your songs. But what I kind of want to start with is there's kind of like these phases as you become like an artist, and like so there's kind of like that when you're younger, and you kind of are like getting into that headspace of like just loving music, and like maybe wanting to be on stage one day and be in a band. What was that like for you growing up? Like for me, I was down here in this basement with my headphones on. I'd be like doing chores and like just singing at the top of my lungs, thinking no one could hear me over the vacuum. But now as an adult, I'm like, dude, everyone in the house could hear me singing these songs. So what was it like for you, like coming up?
Yeah, I definitely had that experience where my father came home from work and I was singing into a karaoke machine and I had no idea he was there. But for me, it actually all started with the electric guitar. I was a guitarist before I was a vocalist or a songwriter. There was a song called I Understand Completely by Paul Gilbert on Guitars That Rule the World. And that was the first time I'd ever heard a composition that didn't include vocals. And I was like, I could write something like that, or I could write something that wasn't like full song form. And I went to the studio and recorded like my first song, and actually way before Skitzo. And I really hope that these things stay as buried as they are. But you know, there were demos and cassettes and things that are in like my special closet at my house that Sam will find one day when I pass away. But leading up to Skitzo Calypso and throughout the musical journey, there was a lot of experimenting and embarrassing snafus that you have to go through.
Yeah.
You have to fail a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went through that phase with like a lot of other musicians. Like, not saying anyone was bad or anything, but you kind of learn like what works and what doesn't, and working with other writers and stuff, you kind of learn like what's meaningful to you, and trying to build on that. And so you mentioned the one guitar song. Like, what were some other like records? Like, I kind of came up on like the first few Matchbox 20 records, and I was into the Goo Goo Dolls, and I think we had like the Green Day greatest hits floating around. Like, so a lot of those 90s bands.
Yeah.
What were like the big ones for you?
So when I was a kid, I remember my dad took my stepbrother and I to the record store, and we could each buy a 45. And my first 45 was Quiet Riot's Come On Feel the Noise. And I couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old. I might not have even been that. So that kind of set the tone. My mom was a rock and roller, so I was kind of introduced to things like the Moody Blues and things like that. But I remember Columbia House, and I got Led Zeppelin, I believe it was 3. And back then, if you opened the package, you had to then you had to pay for it.
Right.
Otherwise, you could just return to sender and you didn't have to pay for it. And I was always so curious. And I remember opening Zeppelin 3 and putting it in my Walkman right before bed. And I was just blown away by this loud, high-pitched rock and roll sound, which would, like everybody, I think, they know you like certain groups, but they don't know why or where it really started.
Right.
And for me, it was Zeppelin 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, which one? What's that one open with?
Immigrant Song.
Yeah, Immigrant Song. I was thinking there's sometimes those records that like they kind of have that build up in the beginning, but that's one of those ones like hits you right off the bat, like boom.
And it's funny because the rest of the record isn't really like that.
Yeah.
But that was one of the things that really set the tone for my writing too, was Led Zeppelin, and why I was really drawn to bands like Faith No More, were they were always experimenting. They didn't really have a sound, and that was kind of their sound. Like Zeppelin, it all sounds like rock and roll, but they did a lot of experimenting.
Right.
A lot. So
that's one of the things that like I loved about that band. Like, you know, a lot of people know them for like that classic rock type guitar sound, but like the ones that hit me are songs like No Quarter, where it's just like this moody organ, and it comes in, it's just like this, it's like intense without being heavy type of feel, a lot of like tension in that song.
Yeah.
But like I've always appreciated bands that do that. Like, you know, U2's another band I've always appreciated. You know, they weren't as renowned for their experimentation, but I always appreciated it.
Just like rhythms like Trampled Underfoot, Dire Makers, stuff like that. It's just like, it's not your traditional like Black Dog or even rock and roll, the song, so.
Cool. So the next thing I want to talk about is like, you know, I kind of, after you kind of grow up in that space of like, you know, oh man, like I love music. I want to have that in my life. And so for me, it wasn't until like before my senior year of high school, like I had a guitar. I think I tried playing it one time, like learning it one time, and I fell off. But then this time I was hooked, and I like picked it up and I like played it every day, like despite how many people were probably annoyed by it and how out of tune it probably sounded, because you know, you don't hear that kind of stuff at first. You know, you kind of get the ear for it later, but like for you, like when did you kind of hit that point of like I want to be a musician?
Well, I was taking lessons from the age of about 8 years old until, I don't know, probably mid-high school with Vince Corson at Musicland. So I knew pretty early on I wanted to do it. My father and I would watch Simon and Garfunkel's live in Central Park religiously, so that's always a really fond memory for me. And I think that what I came to realize was my father was really into music and my mother was really into music. And I think I was trying to, on a very Freudian level, get both of their attention. And I also loved music, so it was kind of art therapy for me. So after, I guess, getting through like the guitar phase where I really ran with the guitar, I kind of realized that I really enjoyed songwriting and I really enjoyed writing. And so the guitar at that point almost became like back burner. It became like the tool to do the thing, you know. So I don't focus on like a guy like Patrick Size or Eric McCullough. Those guys are like guitar to the core. As where I realized with writing books and writing songs, I like writing. You know, that's what I really enjoy. So once I got that itch, that there was really no going back, and then the albums just started falling on top of each other.
Yeah. I know that I was writing songs before I started playing the guitar, and I don't know if that was more of just like an experimental thing or like just like a release of whatever I was feeling at the time. I do remember like writing out lyrics to other songs that I really liked, just to kind of like it was just like practice.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, once I started playing the guitar, it was like a different thing. I don't think I really tried to put songs together until I like was in a room with other musicians, and I kind of played like some of my ideas, and that's when I kind of realized like, okay, you know, this is something that I could do. But I almost didn't even have aspirations of being a singer at the time. I was like, I'm really focused on the guitar. You know, I was perfectly fine just playing rhythm. As much as I love guitar solos, I was never like that worried about being good enough to be able to play them.
Yeah.
But yeah, once I was in a room with a few guys and they were kind of like, yeah, you should be the singer. That's kind of like when I kind of started taking that part of it seriously. Like, okay, yeah. I should probably be able to write my own songs.
Well, that was the biggest hurdle. That was the biggest hurdle, I think, and that was that it got to the point where I was writing all these songs and I didn't want somebody else singing my songs, but I wasn't really a singer, you know. It took a couple cassette tapes and that kind of thing to be like, okay, I can sing passably, you know, and then over time it would get better, but yeah.
So then, like, let's fast forward, like, now you've kind of been playing music a while, and you're kind of at that point now where you're kind of like actualizing this dream, this kind of thing that's in your head.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, it's not all glamorous and stuff. Like, you know, you kind of wish it would be that thing where you release an album and you go show up at the club and there's like 1,000 people there to see you. But, you know, for us local musicians, it's not like that. It's like, it's usually a struggle to get 50 people out to a show, but there's still like that feeling of like, I'm doing this and this is like my thing. And so, like, what was that kind of like for you, like making those first records and kind of going out and playing?
Oh my God,
live?
It was absolutely addicting. And one of the things that I did early on was the first record, just by talent kind of dictated at the time. It was a stereotypical punk record.
Yeah.
You know, and then I got better at my music, so then it became like an alternative rock record, and I would alienate all the punk guys. And then the next record was gothy because I was starting to get into kind of like a weird place, and then I alienated a lot of the alternative people, and then that just became the thing. But I started becoming addicted to the idea of this story that I was telling, this almost personification of my dreams. And so fast forward, like you were saying, now we're at like 24 albums or EPs. It's an outrageous catalog of music, and it's just like I've hit a point where I'm good. Like, I don't feel like I need to do anything or prove anything to myself or anyone else. So now I'm just kind of like, I don't know, just coloring up the landscape a little bit. Like, well, you've heard this, you see this, but check out this flower bed over here of songs. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of came in, I guess, towards the end of the Skitzo era. In terms of, I guess, how long was that Skitzo Calypso, like, I know you kind of have different band members throughout the years, but how long was that general era before you started We Love the Underground?
We Love the Underground started, actually, people don't realize this, it was in 2009.
Okay.
So right on the heels of burning down an empire, I started doing what I wanted to do more songs. And, you know, being in a band, you can't always convince people to want to spend the money to record and continue chasing maybe whatever dream you have in your head. So it wasn't until 2013 that I met Eric, and then that became a band. So at that point, The Day the Devil Fooled the World and Mouthful of Graffiti, they were out there. And I think it was Mouthful of Graffiti that really kind of maybe interest Eric. He was like, wow, this is really cool. I want to help bring this to the stage. And at that point, Skitzo was winding down, and I was kind of done. I was kind of checking out. And then all of a sudden, fast forward another 4 years, and Underground really took the town by storm. So I didn't anticipate that, though. But yeah, Underground.
Yeah, that was probably about the time that I was first checking you out, because I know I met
2012.
Yeah, my friend Andrew at the time, I think, took me to see you guys, and that was, I want to say, like 2009, 2010, but that was before we met. Like, I think I just seen you play,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was like, dude, those guys, they got some energy, man. And I didn't know as much about your catalog at the time, but yeah, I mean, and I think Kirby was there too. That was one of the first times I was hanging out with him. That was before we even started our Far From Sundown. But yeah, I just want to talk about some of these songs because obviously, I've done lights for your band a bunch of times, and certain songs stick out to me.
I feel like there's one that you're going to say.
Right. Well, okay, so let's start with that one. If I slow down, I'll stop.
Yeah.
I remember I was in a band at the time. Again, I think this may have been before I met you. This was at Ram's Head Live.
Okay.
It was, I think, the first Mobtown Music Festival thing.
Right.
I think one of the first ones they did, because I think they had the compilation and everything. Mm-hmm. And I remember Until My Heart Stops Beating was on there, which was, I think, the first actual song I heard.
Okay.
Like, recorded by you guys. And I remember thinking, like, oh, this is a badass song, So, but I remember I was there, and it was me and the drummer of this cover band I was in and the guitar player, and they were brothers. And I remember, like, you were playing a song, and you, like, finished that song, and then Brian went into that doo-doo-doo-doo, that riff,
Yeah.
and we were all just kind of like, oh, shit.
It's about to get real.
Yeah. And, I remember looking over, and the other guys were, like, kind of had the same look on their face, like, dude, that's a riff right there.
Yeah.
And you guys just launched into this song, and yeah, so is that kind of one of those songs that you guys, I know you played me the demo, so obviously you guys worked on it a lot, but
Yeah.
kind of like a collaboration with Eric and Gary and them.
Well, it was Brian.
I'm sorry, Brian, yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times the way the Skitzo stuff, especially in the Between the Lines era, would work, it'd be kind of like you. I'd go in there with like the acoustic skeleton of the tune, and then Gary would add some like rhythmic layers, and then Brian would maybe come up with some riffs, and so that it did become a lot more collaborative around the Between the Lines era. And then going into Ghost, it was like we were literally writing the songs together. There was no like really even a foundation. Every once in a while there'd be a song foundation, but yeah, and that I think that's why that record had it had its own sound. Like that at that point the band had a sound. It wasn't just the Brad sound. It was all of our sound. So and the song is as literal as it could get. If I slow down, I'll stop. It's just like, what it is. It's like you're just like chasing this thing, and you know that if you slow down, you're not going to have the momentum to get it going again. So
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll get a kick out of this. So all my episode titles are kind of question-based.
Okay.
Which is kind of a dig at my own song titles, because I have a lot of song titles that are questions. So the title for this episode is going to be, If I Slow Down, Will I Stop?
there you go.
But yeah. So yeah, that was kind of like the first, and then I know you did the EP, the Ghost EP. But yeah, and then
there was
around
actually a Ghost 2 EP that we didn't end up releasing because a lot of the songs were done with Chris O'Rourke. And at the time, there was a lot of friction there. Now, obviously, a lot of time's passed and Chris passed.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was like, we really want to make sure that people got to hear this music, because that included songs like Until My Heart Stops Beating, Ready or Not, just songs that people really know from the live shows. But we didn't feel right back in 2012 releasing them because we weren't on good terms.
Right.
And so it was just like, yeah.
I always kind of got like a vibe of like sticking it to the man from your music. I don't know if you were like a heavily political person. I know that like I've always had like the vibes of it in my music, but not as direct as my recent album. But
one of the things I struggled with, Will, was the fact that I came from a place, especially in like 1996. I was into like Bollocks, like Never Mind the Bollocks, all that kind of stuff.
I was going to ask if like there was like an era of your life that kind of, because for me right now there's just kind of been like this. There was this time where like, okay, like I get it. There's going to be the people that don't like this guy and the people that don't like that guy.
Right.
But in my era, there's just been this kind of like decline of like this real divide between people, and like if you say you support the one guy, then you're this guy, and if you say you support this guy, you're that guy. And it's like, I don't feel like that I'm that way at all. Like I've always felt kind of like like a little to the left, but I like appreciate
all the different viewpoints.
Those different viewpoints and the understanding of that. But like what kind of where were you at? Like, how did that world kind of hit you in that way that made you kind of want to?
I don't know.
Like, kind of approach it in your songwriting or include it.
Well, I came from a place. This is the toughest transition for me of not only not wanting people to like me, but kind of going out of my way to make sure that people didn't like me by being such a prick musically. Like, I would poke all kinds of edges and things. And what happened was this kind of like this counterintuitive reaction. People liked it, and they started liking me more and more for it. And then I had to adjust to people liking me and my music when I really did not care about that at all. I mean, if you go back to like Join the Call, Premeditated Acts of Stupidity, all this kind of stuff, it was definitely not, it wasn't geared towards attracting anyone. So that was a really tough transition. So to what you're saying, I kind of got to a point where I understand that there's a reason that people are the way they are. And if we actually took the time to understand that, we'd realize we're all just people doing people things. And
yeah, so I feel like
unless somebody does something really shitty,
yeah,
then I don't really have a problem with you.
There's definitely extreme people out there, but I always feel like they're the minority of the group, and they're also just like the loudest.
Yeah,
and that's why like I feel like there's like a lot of times this feeling of like why are they saying that about this, or why do I feel this way about that? And it's like, I find most of the time if I talk to people, you can have a conversation as long as you're like open to it.
Yeah.
You know? And like I've you know, it's definitely like I just remember feeling like seeing that shift happen.
Yeah.
And like noticing it happening, and then that's kind of like why I felt more of a need to address it in my music. So
another thing, my sister used to say, like, I won't piss you off because I don't want you writing a song about me. And as what I was saying about like almost going out of my way to make people not like me, I would deliberately write songs about people just because I was pissed off at them, and I knew it was going to live on forever. Like, there was a song called Piss Carcassin. I'm not going to say who it's about, but it's about a specific person, or Feeling Fine was about a specific person in high school. And I knew that it would get around town, and I was hoping it would get around town. And then, I never like considered like the backlash of that.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have, mine are more romantic songs, but like I definitely have those people that like, this is about a specific person, and I wouldn't want that person to know it's about them. I think there's maybe one person in the world that knows I wrote a song about them, you know, with the exception of, you know, I have some stuff that I'm writing that's for my dad, and that's going to be it's going to be kind of like a tribute thing for him. So, but yeah, you know, like, you know, if you broke my heart or you know, or I just had really strong feelings for you and it didn't work out, like, I don't want to give you the satisfaction of knowing that I put effort into a song for you.
Well, I mean, it is songwriting is art therapy, and if you can't go to a song and express that, then you just have to live with it. So I'd rather just express it and then force everyone else to deal with it. Like, well, it's outside of me now. It's your problem.
Cool. So let's dig into some of the We Love the Underground stuff. So. Okay. That was probably when I worked with you the most, because you would bring me in to do a lot of lighting.
Yes, and you did a great job.
I would always I would usually give everything a listen, but I'm very much it was also one of those things where your guys' live show was kind of different than how it sounded on the record, because there was a lot of drum programming and stuff, and a lot of effects on the record, whereas live you had a full band, 2 guitar players, and just like, you know, it was a different kind of energy. And I always,
most of the songs, there's only 1 or 2 songs that I can think of, weren't Gary. I mean, so it wasn't even a lot of drum programming. It was but I know what you mean, because the shows were always a lot more energetic than we could capture on the recordings.
So yeah, there were songs that like when I'm doing lighting, typically it's on the fly like that, because you know, but I'm always following the drummer, and like the kind of the way that he's playing kind of informs me of what's, if they're really good, it informs me of what's going on in the song. Like, oh, this fill tells me that it's winding down and to bring the lights down, or if it's like kind of low and he plays like a big fill, all right, we're about to take things up a notch. So, but yeah, like a song like Come the Destroyer is one that's just like got this amazing energy.
Dude, that song, it was back in 2012. It was the summer of 2012, and I was literally having an existential crisis / losing my mind. I was literally mentally breaking down, and Come Destroyer was basically like, we need to end this at this point, you know. So that's why it's such a powerful song.
Wow.
And I would get in these brain locks with my OCD where it wasn't like an OCD where, you know, maybe you brush your teeth like a certain way, or you shut the door 3 times and then, you know, whatever. It was more of a mental compulsion, and I could not get out of this loop, and it was ruining my summer. It was causing problems with Lisa and I because I wouldn't stop talking about it. And that song just kind of, it snapped me out of it. I guess I explained it to myself through music in a way that it was like, okay. And then I was able to move on. So that song for me was extremely pivotal. And so when I would perform it live, I tried to make sure that I was honoring the poor bastard that wrote it, because I was not doing well.
Yeah, I definitely have a couple songs that are like that. Like you kind of want to, obviously you don't want to go back to that place, but you want to channel that emotion and like try to convey it to the audience so they can kind of feel how much that song means to you. Like a song like Death Wish is one like that for me. Like,
it's a good one.
Obviously, you know, like I'm usually like a pretty upbeat person around most people. So like I think a lot of people are kind of taken aback when they're like, he wrote a song called Death Wish. So but yeah, Come the Destroyer. Fits of a Rage was another one that I had a lot of fun doing lights for, because it always had that like that dynamic of like it would kind of have that like that, and then it would get. So that was always, having stuff like that is always fun when you're doing lights.
Sure,
because you can really like blow up that one part and make it stand out.
Well, so Fits of Rage is funny because, and Joe would get a kick out of this. This is when I started turning into Anthony Kiedis, in the sense that I had like too many songs about California, all right? But I was still like, even at that time, trying to process this very impactful trip. Like for anyone else, it was 4 months. But it was 4 months living in Los Angeles, California, as a 17-and-a-half-year-old boy, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And you grow up really, 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 really fast. And so I have written a lot of songs about that time. But Joe, he would always give me a hard time. Like, oh, another song about California, huh? I'm like, yeah, man, still processing this, you know.
Yeah, man. A couple other ones that really stood out to me. I think Let No Hand Hold Us Down was one of the first ones that was on, like one of the samplers. And then, but like one of my favorites was always The Isolationist. Always loved that song.
Well, the funny thing about that particular song was the song was done and it was written, and the night before, and probably the best part of that song is the very end. And that part didn't exist. And Gary, he likes to go in pretty well with a plan. And I told him, I was like, hey, by the way, that song that we were rehearsing, it's now about another minute and a half long. He's like, what? What did you do? You know, and I was like, well, I have this ending part that I have to kind of express, because I didn't quite get the thought across.
Yeah.
But The Isolationist is like, you know, you get to these phases as an artist where it's just like, I don't care about being known or seen. I just want to kind of recoil into my own little world and express my thoughts, not necessarily have to present them. And I was kind of in a mode where I was like, I'm content to do that. So, it's a pretty powerful one.
I totally get that, especially like there's time I've tried to be more conscious about it lately, because there's definitely songs where like I think if people ask me what they were about, But I don't know, man. I was just
That was the time.
I was just writing songs, and like I didn't really understand it. But now I'm much more like, I'll look at a song and be like, what am I trying to say in this song? And if I don't feel like I'm hitting that point, I'll try to rework the lyrics, or, because a lot of times I feel like I'll have a really great song, I'll have a really great verse, chorus, and I always kind of leave like that bridge as like something like I haven't written a bridge for this yet. And that's like a lot of times what I do when I'm with Tony. I'll be like, here's my idea. I think it needs a bridge. And then once we kind of figure out how we're doing that, then that'll kind of inform me, all right, I'm going to write this part. And that's kind of like the where I'll put kind of like the moral of the story, or the where the story's kind of ended, or what I've taken away from it.
I think sometimes when you go with the stream of consciousness approach, whether you are aware of it or not, you're still trying to communicate something to yourself. It's coming from somewhere, like the right words are there. You're just not sure where they fit yet.
Yeah, and that's like why sometimes, like I said, having Tony, because obviously I want the song to be good, so I try to get like that general idea down, and then I don't want to like lock it into something that like later on I'm going to go back and go, that wasn't a finished song. So that's why I'll take a song like that to Tony, and he'll go, well, this definitely needs a bridge. Or there's a song we just did. It's called There'll Be Another Time. It's going to be on my next album, and it was one that I was certain I wanted like verse, chorus, and then like this big outro.
Like a guitar solo outro, or just like a big...
just kind of almost like a musical kind of just...
Layla?
Apex, almost kind of like that.
Yeah.
Like the chorus kind of has this beat that where like I wanted it to kind of build off of that beat. And he was kind of sitting there, he was like, I think this song needs a bridge. And I was like, you're right. And so we ended up adding like a solo, and then a section for a bridge, and then we went back to a chorus, and then it still had that building feeling to it, but then that's when I was kind of like, all right, this song is kind of like, this was before my dad got sick, but it was kind of like, it was almost kind of this message. I was always kind of thinking like, what would I want to say to someone if I was passing away, or like I knew like my time was running out. So that was kind of the theme of the song. So I was like, maybe I should get another voice in here to kind of be like that other person that I'm talking to. Yeah. And so I brought in, her name is Abby Dana. She sang with me at the album release show. And yeah, it really just added this whole other layer to that song. Yeah. That like I didn't realize it needed until Tony's kind of built that framework for it. So yeah. You ever have like stuff like that happen when he'll kind of be like, this song needs this, and then you're kind of like, well, actually, now that you've done that,
well, then
I'm really getting some ideas now.
We were just talking about that the other day on the show. I was talking with Ainsley, where I used to go into the sessions 100% prepared, like every part written. Here we go. And then I realized, we're especially working with Tony. He's a producer too. So he'll be like, well, I don't think that part's very good, or maybe we should change that, or maybe instead of a guitar riff here, it would be more modern if we did the guitar riff on the synth. And so that changes things. And so I started going into the sessions with general ideas, and I would have riffs and everything ready, but just a little bit more flexible, because there's definitely been times where I'm trying to think of a song in particular that he really mutated into something that it didn't necessarily go in as, but in a good way, like not mutated in a bad way. That's got a bad connotation, I guess. So yeah, it's definitely happened. But there's definitely time. It's usually with Tony, he's like, you don't need this part, or you don't need that part, and he's trying to make it a little bit more of an accessible song, because the song's 6-7 minutes long, and it's like, no.
Well, he always approaches things in he's very respectful of your art. And like I was actually, I don't know if you know Jim. Jim's in there a lot. I'm trying to remember the name of his band, but it's slipping my brain. He plays flute and
a flutist.
Yes, he's a flutist, and but he's in there a lot, and he works with Tony a lot. And he was kind of saying how like when he brings people in, he's like, Tony's so good at like working with other musicians, and I say, yeah, he's got such a great approach. It's like where you might say like, dude, you're playing that part wrong. Like he'll turn around in his chair and be like, interesting. You're playing an F sharp there, which is an interesting choice. Maybe can you try playing a G there? Let's hear how that sounds. Right. And you're just like, he approaches it so like diplomatic and like in a way that like I feel like you can't be mad at him or like. But I know that he's told me like, yeah, sometimes I tell people stuff and they're like, no, I'm going to play it this way.
Well, one of the things he's really good at too is like when you're younger and you're writing songs, and I actually reached out to him recently. I was like, look, this song was all written with fives, and it's a lot of weird chord progressions because at the time I really don't think I knew what I was doing. And could you help me identify which should be the major or the minor here, because I'm getting a little like, well, he's like, well, this isn't really in any key, Brad, so I would go with this. I'm like, okay, so it's not me, I'm not crazy. And so he's brilliant. He's brilliant as a producer, and he's brilliant in his communication, because he can say something to like Brian Holmes or Eric or something in a way that's, if it comes from me, it's going to come out wrong no matter how I say it. It's going to either come across like I'm trying to be controlling or... Yeah.
The singer syndrome, like just stick to singing, man. Like, dude, I have opinions too.
Right.
You know, like I
got a brain.
Yeah, you know, like sometimes you hear a part and you're like, man, I'd love to see... But there's also that element of like trusting your bandmates, you know, of kind of like... To be in that role, and I think that, you know, I think they want to feel like they're fulfilling their
destiny,
their part or whatever, you know. But
yeah,
but that's where I was going to get into like the well, real quick before we get into Veteran Avenue, I also just wanted to mention. So you were doing We Love the Underground, and then you started writing the Children's of the Program books.
Yes,
and then you started doing like the We Love the Underground music kind of became like the soundtracks of the books.
Yes,
which I thought was a really cool concept, and like there's other people that have done similar things. I know,
sure.
Like Coheed and Cambria does like the I think it's like a comic book or something like that.
Same with My Chemical Romance.
Yeah, so yeah. What kind of sparked your brain to kind of start writing a book, and like how long did it take to kind of from starting writing it to finishing it? What was that like?
It was awful. There's no fantasy to it at all. Like the idea of just like going to a Starbucks and penning out your ideas and it's just going to magically come to you. No, it was a hellscape is what it was. But I was a journalism major and I always liked to write. So I got this job at patch.com and I kind of got in touch with my inner journalist again, because we went away to this fantasy camp, this training thing, and it was like all the salespeople with all the writers. And I was like, man, I'm really a writer. That's who I am. And so I just started basically telling my story. So I went back to the earlier Skitzo Calypso records and tried to pull out the themes. And that started kind of becoming what was Children of the Program. It started very autobiographical. And then it kind of dovetailed into this whole science fiction dystopian kind of story. But that's where it came from. And then as I was writing book one, that's when Underground was kind of out there playing quite a bit, and I was like, what if we wrote a soundtrack song for this or that? So it started with, I think we did like Back from a Suicide, we did Cadence of the Sun existed, Eric came in with the music for Paint the Desert with My Heart, and it takes place in the Painted Desert. So from there, it just naturally became this thing, and then book two came along, and I wrote an EP for that, and that's what happened. That's
cool. Yeah, I got the books up there. I was just thinking, like, man, it would have been cool to put them like one on the table or something right there. But yeah,
you don't have A Immortal. That's my apex. Like I reached my goal. Like that's a great book. The first two are crazy.
I definitely want to have them because but I'm a terrible reader. Like I think I started reading the first one and I was loving it, but I'm just so like. I'm really bad with like staying on top of that. Like I've just got so much going on. It's like once I kind of get in bed, that's it. And that's kind of like, I guess like the thought of like having a spot where I would sit down and read. It's like I haven't quite hit that point yet. Maybe at some point, but I definitely would like to have the whole set.
Yeah.
And then when people come over, be like, yeah, these are the. I could tell them about it, like I know what's going on.
Pontificate of them.
Yeah. But yeah, dude, that's awesome. And then I know you just released the it's called All These Things That I've Said.
These
right?
Things I've Said.
Yeah.
Which is all the songs that have been actually released up to this point, starting from Join the Cult until now. And obviously, there was a lot of songs, and you know this, that were never released, but we just stuck with the ones that were released. And I found what the themes were, created chapters. I had the spreadsheet. Chapter 1 is these songs. Chapter 2 is these songs, and this is why. And then kind of explained what was going on in my head. Because what I noticed were a lot of the themes were the same. It was just my perspective had changed.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. So the last era here, I guess, of the most recent. I don't want to say the last, because you never know.
Well, if I slow down.
Yeah. So Veteran Avenue is your most recent project, and to me, it seems kind of more just like your chance to just try different things, collaborate with more people, and that's kind of like what my whole thing has been with when I started the solo Will Sims thing. Was I wanted to have the chance to work with whoever I wanted to work with. I would have a song and be like, hey, it'd be really cool to bring this person in, and most of the time, if I ask that person, they're like, send me some dates and we make it happen. But what's the process been like for you? How I know that you did a song with Dana, and you've sent me a bunch of songs. I've listened to a lot of them, but it's still like the newest and freshest to me, and I haven't been able to like devote as much time as I would have liked to listen to them. But from what I've heard, like just a lot of different corners of like styles and stuff that you kind of bringing to it.
Yeah, so it's there's kind of three different aspects of the songwriting. It's either the bluesier tunes, the more big escape ballad type things, and then more of the big heavy rock and roll songs like underground kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the three ways I tend to write in the project. But the idea was I just been playing with a lot of people over the years. So I wanted to bring all the people from Skitzo and underground onto a song, at least a song. And I still haven't achieved that yet. And also bring in some people that I haven't had a chance to play with, like yourself. At some point, we're going to do a song.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And so it's just been a fun project. And what I'll do is I'll write the song and I'll be like, this guy would be really cool in drums for this. And this guy would be great for bass because this is the style of music they like. Or like a female voice. Like the song with Dana, she sings through the lens of her character. And the character is a female character. So, it's just been a lot of experimenting, a lot of fun. And underground was tough because when that stopped, it was like I had a decision to make. Either I continue on and go back to being a solo thing, or just honor what it became with the guys. And my decision was that even though it started as a solo thing, the reason people knew it in the area and it got to the level it got to was because of those guys. So when Eric decided to leave, it was kind of like, I think that this needs to stop. And then at that point, it was like, okay, now we're going to start another band, right? So that gave me some reflective time. And I was like, you know what? I just want to do something that is a little less project-oriented and a little bit more collaborative. And by project, I mean like personal project.
Well, yeah, it's funny how, because like both Skitzo and We Love the Underground kind of started as that and then evolved into like this band atmosphere where you kind of had this dedicated lineup that was writing on multiple songs and stuff like that. But then, like I kind of respect the because that's almost how Roll It Over started. I mean, it wasn't exactly the same.
Yeah,
I had the Roll It Over name forever, but then we went through multiple lineup changes and stuff. And when the band ended, I wanted to keep the name and keep going, but I think that they felt like it had become kind of this like almost like sacred thing. Like you kind of had this bond with these guys that you made this music with. And
I also realized if I did do that, it would cause more ill feelings than just letting it go and letting it be cool for what it was.
Right.
Because people would have opinions on that. Like, I don't like the direction he's taking what was ours.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. And I'm very sensitive with Skitzo with that. Like, there was 6 albums before there was Brian and Gary. But Brian and Gary were a part of it for like 20 years. So if I'm to release new Skitzo music, at least I'll ask. Like, I released a re-recording of Shooting Down on America that included Joe and Gary. This song called False Creed that had Joe and Gary. Brian was asked. Brian just wasn't able to do it at the time. So, but I'm still very sensitive with them about that because I care. Their relationships mean more to me than continuing the band or the name.
Yeah, I think that I probably didn't handle it the best way I could have, because I kind of was at that point where I was like, dude, we just released this album. Like, I really want to push these songs, but like, I only want to do it if like you guys are kind of like behind me in that. And it didn't feel like it didn't feel like they felt that way. It felt like they were kind of like we should move on to other things.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, that was a tough time for me to kind of, but then like when I kind of hit that point, I was like, well, I'll just do a solo thing, you know, and I was kind of just at that point where I felt confident enough to do it, and I think the biggest surprise was just that, like, when I wanted to start playing shows, I reached out to some people and they were like, yeah, I'll come play. Mm-hmm. I'll come play guitar for you. I'll come play bass. I was surprised how many people were up for it. Like, I always wanted to try to pay them if I could, but a lot of times people are just like, yeah, man, I was happy to do it. You know? So that to me was kind of like the biggest surprise of going down that road was just having people that were interested.
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like it's so easy these days for people to just be like, oh, I'm too busy, you know, I've got other stuff going on.
Yeah.
So you start to really appreciate people that want to be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, man, you've got this whole musical odyssey. It's out there. People can go listen to it on Spotify and all that.
So that's one of the things I'm working on right now. So with the whole trademark lawsuit and everything, I'm starting to get the albums back out there, and I've gotten back to about 2,000. So what I'm going to be working on now is some of the records that aren't out there yet, remastering them, but also re-recording a couple tracks from the earlier records so people could hear what the songs could have sounded like if they weren't recorded live in this guy's living room, basically.
Actually, you know what's crazy is I've been messing around with this AI separation software, which has been pretty nuts. Like,
what's that?
It's basically how they did the new Beatles song. Okay. So they had a recording of John Lennon playing piano and singing this song, and it was a beautiful recording. And they tried at one point a while back to like add other tracks to it, but they could never get it to sound good because every time they turned the piano down, it was turning his vocals down. Okay. Well, now they've got this AI separation software that they use like machine learning to kind of go in, and they found like the vocal track and separate that from the piano. So now they have the piano and the vocals as a separate thing. And yeah, I don't know if you heard the song, but it's like very modern sounding produced track with, yeah,
I did hear it.
All the
interesting.
Everyone's on it.
So what do you do? Do you like? Would you roll it over and feed it into it, and be like, okay, send me the tracks back, but just the vocals or just the guitar?
The one that I know that there's a bunch of different kinds, but like the one that I've been using, you put the song in and you tell it I want the vocals split, and then it'll go through and it'll split the vocals out of the song. And it'll give you a version of the song without the vocals.
But how's it doing that?
It's like a machine learning thing. It goes through and it hears what it interprets as vocals. Yeah. And it pulls those out and makes them as a separate track. And they sound like pretty clean vocals. Now there's some times where like if the mix, because like what I was messing around with was old board recordings from like shows. And like some of them are really bad. But like some of them I can get like a clean vocal off of it, and then maybe like an okay run of the bass. Usually it's hard with like the guitars and stuff. I'll try that, and a lot of times what I'll get is like acoustic and electric and like the highs off of the bass coming through on a track. But it pulls that out, and then you're left with like everything else in the track.
It's interesting.
So there's like this. It's kind of like this interesting thing you can kind of do with that. So I'm kind of wondering if I can take those and like rebuild stuff off of that.
That would be interesting.
Because it's like you're kind of using what's already there, but also,
cleaning it
obviously
up.
You would have to. There's probably certain areas of it that you'd probably have to redo, but it's very interesting stuff. Like one of the cooler things I've come across in terms of technology these days.
Because I have like some of the old reels and the old ADATs, so I've often wanted to go in and be like, okay, well let's pull the musical components, and I'm just gonna re-sing the song. But it sounds like maybe you could get a copy of the song with the vocals removed and then just go re-sing the song instead of trying to reload the ADATs and all that. Interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool concept, and I'm hoping that I'm excited to see what that'll lead to in like other musical things, because I'm sure there's tons of like old songs that they can only make it sound so good because of the way it's recorded, but maybe now they can make some older songs sound more like modern.
Yeah,
like it's the original thing, but it's a much more modern mix because they were able to separate the elements. Wow. But yeah, man, that's good stuff, man. And real quick, you mentioned something about the video game,
the Playing Mantis
and stuff, and like I was saying, the intros to my show have been these like little beats and stuff that I've been putting together.
See if this will actually play.
Am I gonna copyright stricken? Is there some video game somewhere that's gonna come after?
No. It was just a funny thing because we were talking pre-podcast about your intro music, and I said a little unknown Brad fact is I had a project called the Playing Mantis, and it was just basically like a cakewalk type program, and I would go in and all the sounds I think because the sounds sound so bad, it sounded like video game music.
Right.
Instead of industrial, it sounded like Castlevania right there.
Yeah.
So
I was
Playing Mantis.
That's kind of like sometimes I'll make an intro, beat or whatever, and I'll just be like, this is actually really cool. Like I could probably stretch this out into like a 3-minute thing that could loop and be in like a video game. But yeah, man. Any other cool projects going on?
I think that's it. Yeah, I think I'm really just focused on the pod, and I'm actually working on a new book.
Nice.
Naturally, but this has to do with all these like really crazy haunted experiences that we had.
Ooh.
Jessica's Lane there's a very weird energy in that house, and as a matter of fact, when we left there, the woman who bought the house actually reached out to Lisa about a year later and asked if we had experienced weird things in that house.
Wow.
And the truth was, yes. But the things that we experienced were nowhere near as horrific as what she experienced. And she ended up selling the house. She had a priest go through the whole deal. Like, she had a very bad experience. And so anyway, it's going to be a book about some of the hauntings we experienced.
That's cool, man. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
I think we had a good time, and
you had a lot of editing.
I look forward to coming back over to do the MOG again at some point.
Yeah. We'll get it probably early in the new year, or possibly I'm off actually the entire week after Christmas because that's what the college
pretty normal
does.
For me too. Like, I usually take that week off.
So why don't we try to plan on maybe either a weekday or even a weeknight that week? We'll just get together and do it. And
sounds good, man. Thanks a lot.
Brother. Thank you.
Follow the link now to hear the Veteran Avenue song, Worlds of Man.